This is an interview with Mrs. Janina Stensson. The date is July 22nd, 1994, and we're in her home in Toronto, Ontario. Good afternoon, Janina.
Good afternoon, Linda.
Thank you very, very much for taking time to talk with me today about your work in landscape architecture in Canada. I wonder if we can begin with some early questions. Where were you born and when?
I was born in Warsaw, Poland, on November 24, 1919.
Oh, just a few years ago.
Oh, plenty of years. Lots of years ago.
Lots of years ago. And is that a large town in Poland? Or is
That's
it
the
rural?
capital of the city. It's more or less the size of Toronto.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. And you were telling me a little while ago about your very first experience with landscape architecture, something with a chestnut. Could you tell me about that,
No,
please?
that was the childish story. See, I was born in Warsaw, but I was raised on my father's estate. My father was a landlord, and the estate was on 14,000 acres. And we have a beautiful park. And I remember when I was 4 years old, and I always stay with my father and ask him all kind of stupid questions. I asked what the chestnuts are for, and he told me that will be the seeds for a big tree. So I collect some chestnut and I plant, and I was waiting that the tree will grow, and I was very disappointed that they didn't. So that was the beginning of my experience as a future landscape architect.
Did you do your schooling in in Warsaw? Is that where you went to regular school, high school?
Yes, I got my education in Poland, but I went also as a student, I went to practice in Holland, Leiden, and in Belgium.
Oh.
And I graduate as I got a diploma of the engineer of horticulture, specialized in landscape architect, and also a master of philosophy, and I specialize in the history of fine arts, especially the restoration of the historical garden, Renaissance, Baroque, whatever.
Now, the first degree that you got, the first, what is the correct word for it? Diploma.
Yes, the diploma.
Where was that?
Oh, they both were in Poland.
They're both in Poland.
Yes.
Okay. And they both were in Poland, but you did, during that time, did you go directly from one program into the other program? Was your education continuous?
Yes, that's right.
And you started in what year? And graduated in what year?
Oh, I started to work start my planting seriously in the city in 1937.
And as a landscape architect?
That was during the war. The university was closed, so that was the intermission. I start my first year before the war, but during the war we were under the German occupation, and all the university was closed.
And what did you do during the war? What did you do during that time?
I was working in the municipal. So I was working in the municipal nurseries. So really it was a continuous practice, you know.
And what kind of work were you doing? Were they needing, were they using them as gardens for,
yes,
for food, yes. Or?
No, there was ornamental.
Was it? So
ornamental, when there was not enough food during the occupation, there was, of course, we plant some vegetables because to survive, but mostly was ornamentals.
I was talking with Sigurd Hoff about some of his time during the war in Europe, and he was saying that they actually used city parks as vegetable gardens.
Oh yes, that's right. That was common. That was common. In Holland they eat the tulips bulbs because there was no food.
Yeah. So was that a difficult time for you during the war? Was that a hard time, or?
skip the war. We are not talking about my experience during the war, because when I start to tell you about Auschwitz and all this, you will not concentrate on landscape architecture.
Okay. All right. Well, I didn't.
No, this is out of completely.
So,
We are talking about landscape architecture, not the experience during the war.
so after the war ended, then you continued your education?
Yes, that's right.
Good. Yes, yeah.
So my first big work was, after I graduated, was the restoration of the historical garden for the Archbishop of Poland. And then I was working on the restoration of downtown area in Warsaw, planting 2003 in one planting season, and also working on the 44 acres of sporting area, stadium, and related park. Then we work on some, or then I work as on many projects for the hospitals, schools, factories, whatever it was, or botanical gardens, and etc.
Were you self-employed, or were you working for the city, the municipality? What was your?
I
what
was
the
working
structure?
with the chief architects of Poland.
Of the country, then?
Of the country, yes, of course.
And so that you were, they were the ones hired, and you were working in that kind of situation. I'm trying to understand how you would be hired to do all of these things.
Exactly, as a landscape architect, professional landscape architect. And the structure there is completely different. So let's concentrate rather on Canadian landscaping, because that is the most important for you. What I like to tell you that I came to the IFLA Congress in Switzerland.
What year was that?
In what year it was? 54 or 56. I don't remember anymore. Need to find in the what year it was. And then was a Canadian delegation, and they start to ask me about reforestation, not reforestation, the planting of the street in Warsaw, that I planted 2,000 trees. This kind of job, especially it was a caliber trees, 12 inches diameter, and we used the heavy equipment to plant this. And I was very successful. I didn't lose even a half of 1% that when I planned this, that everything is growing until today. So my Canadian colleagues were interested how it was done, and I got the invitation. I went back to Poland, and then I got the invitation from the Canadian landscape architects to lecture on this planting. And I was thinking to come temporary and teach this. But then my correspondence with Jesse Wilhelm Stensson started to be more and more interesting.
Or maybe intimate as well.
So I came in 1958 and we got married. And I joined as a partner the Dunnington Grapp and Stensson. I hope to see this before you publish. Dunnington Grapp was give me a wonderful welcome. He was extremely pleased that I came and that we got married. And he treated me not only as his partner, but also as his daughter.
Hmm. Okay.
And I started to work in Canada.
I think there's one little thing that you told me before that was very significant here, and you said that Bill Stensson said he couldn't get a temporary visa for you, but he could get a permanent visa.
That's right. That was the catch. That was something that made me suspicious on his intention.
How nice that was. So then you came to Canada, and what was the situation at that time? What was Bill doing, and what was your role? How did you fit into everything?
No, I just said that I signed a contract with Dunnington Grab and became the partner in this. And I must say that he was a great help for me because I didn't speak English in this time, and it was difficult for me to work on the project when I couldn't speak the language. But my French was fluent, and he enjoyed speaking French with me. So we work on University Avenue, and as University was really a swan song of Dunnington Grab, he was devoted to do this for the city of Toronto. And I find this job terribly dull, depressing, because we work 12 years on this job, and I think it should be just half a year and it should be done. But every politician was changing the design. And I'm sorry to say that the first design that Howard did were much better than the last that were executed. My part in this was small. I was permitted to design 2 islands, the first and the last one. The first is near the Front Street, is still existing like it was planned. The last one near the Parliament is completely ruined. Then also, the changes that was done in University Avenue is they are not always the advantage. The color scheme is completely lost. The tree, different kind of tree were planted. University Avenue really is a roof garden and was designed to be admired from the office building. Of course, we couldn't stop the people walking there. So this was a big problem, what to do, let them in or close this. No, we decided to let them in, and it was nice to see them having lunch between the flowers and the trees.
What were some of the other projects that you worked on?
There were so many, and I make a list of this project in my book. I wrote the manuscript, and it's ready to be published. But I need some help, and I hope to get a help from the association and get a sponsor who will put the final touch, and that could be published. It's difficult in the small interview like we have now to say that what I have done doing over half a century of my professional work. But one of the most important was the Expo 67 in Montreal. The whole thing started by a telephone from Mac Hancock that he suggests that we form a consortium. 3 of us supposed to represent our firm. So it was Austin Floyd, Mac Hancock, and me. Mac, of course, invited Dunnington Grab and my husband, but then we got a meeting, 3 of us in my house, and Dunnington decided that he is too old to do the job. Especially he died in 65. And that my husband is too busy with Sheridan Nursery because he became president after Dunnington Grab. So I took the job, and I enjoy working for Expo. And I work from the moment that we signed this consortium, and until the day of the opening. That was the end of our job. We designed the part that was done for the corporation, which mean Ile Verte and Ile Notre Dame, and we coordinate the area of the corporation with 32 different pavilions, international pavilions, because every pavilion was doing on his own and coordinate with us. That was fascinating and most interesting job.
Many people that I have interviewed have said that Expo 67 was the most important piece of landscape architecture in Canada. What do you think of that?
I think so. I think because Expo got a terrific location, because it was located on the river, they got right away the scale of Canada. There was something absolutely unique. I went to many other exhibitions. I was participating in the Expo in Brussels, and the international exhibition in Hamburg and many other, and in Vienna and many other countries. There was never a unity of the whole exhibition. There were always a spot of in different area, because no city couldn't afford this wonderful location, the river and the islands on the river. And it was really between Ontario and Quebec, surrounding by this beautiful water. But this created two problems. One, that was the most windy location that you can imagine, which was no good for vegetation. Second was the water level. The water level was very high early spring. And then going down, show the part of the quarry that was, they couldn't be landscape, they couldn't be green, they were just black. So we got a big problem what to do to landscape this area, the difference. And also the canals, the canals were the old quarry. Was necessary to do something with the stone. So we planned the canal with the all kinds of vegetation that will give this immediate effect. We transport the trees from the Quebec area, mostly Papineau, and we plant the creepers. It was a fascinating job. It was really a great experience. And Expo gave us a great satisfaction because people were really enjoy Expo. And even that was sometimes hard to wait to get to a special pavilion, the hours and hours of waiting. People didn't mind. They got a nice, really nice friendly relation. And last year, when we got this Expo 37 plus 25, we celebrate this 25th anniversary. And we went to the site, and we were pleased to see that some of our plantings are still growing and growing well. Regarding even the instruction that we got, because when we were getting the instruction was, we are doing the planting for 6 months, and après nous le déluge is nothing. It was wrong, because we could, with the same effort, with the same money, do something that will be permanent for the city of Montreal. But we were not permitted to do this. We are doing for 6 months, and after this, the tree could be planted and growing for a longer period of time.
And you're saying that there were 32 pavilions that were part of the expo site. And
Oh, no, there were more.
Oh.
I'm talking about only the
one-
part
oh.
that we were working, because we were doing Ile Notre Dame and Ile Verte.
Uh-huh.
This two middle part,
Okay.
that's what we were doing.
And that was the master planning for that then? You were in charge of that planning
Yes.
of that area. What was the basic concept for that master planning? What was the concept for what you were doing there?
First was necessary to build the area and create a unity and build the artificial island in relation to the existing part of Ile Notre Dame, because part of Ile Notre Dame was existing. And also got the people the possibility to use different kind of transportation. They came by railway, they came by boat, they came by canoe. They were all kinds of transportation. It was necessary to give them the possibility to approach and park. Now, we were not, our consortium was not in charge of La Ronde. That was a different part of, we were not involved in this.
But you worked with the other, you coordinated these two particular islands. You coordinated the design of
We represent the corporation. We work for the corporation and for Canada. And coordinate with different international pavilions.
And were other Canadian landscape architects involved
Oh,
in
yes.
those other pavilions?
No, they were involved in La Ronde. No. Every pavilion brought their own.
Did they?
Their own, yes, from their own country.
Uh-huh.
They came from Israel, they came from Germany, they came from France, whatever.
So Canadian landscape architects didn't do the individual pavilions. That was.
No, there was every country did their own.
Do you think
Canada was did the part that to coordinate and united all this part.
And what were some other projects that you worked on that are very important to you?
There is all listed in my manuscript. There were plenty, but they are all listed.
Are there any others that you'd like to talk about?
If I will start talking, it will be too long.
I've got quite a bit of tape. I got quite a bit of time.
Yeah, I participate all the time with something. You cannot stop working. I was teaching, and I was lecture many places in many countries, and also working for IFLA. This gives me this international relation. I was working for 18 years for IFLA, taking lecture in Japan and India and Israel, Portugal, France, Germany, England, Switzerland, Italy, Argentina, United States. So there was plenty. Plenty of
those kinds, when you were traveling like that for IFLA, those kinds of experiences certainly add to your own design vocabulary, don't they? So I'm sure there were
Of course.
things that. What would you consider would be major influences on your design style? How you have designed things? Where do you think that, in your own case, where does that come from?
I feel that this is not national design, that we are so sensitive to arts, and the communication now is so easy through all the media and all the traveling. and all the discussion experience, that we forget that this what was in the past, it was a French style, English style. Things like this doesn't exist anymore. It's an international style because it's an international demand for the same thing. Every country will ask you for children playground. Every country will ask you for a swimming pool or sport area or tennis court or golf course. Absolutely every country. So you cannot say that you design the golf courses only in England. You design everywhere.
And what would make them different from one country to another?
The vegetation, the climate. The climate, the vegetation, that's the only difference today. The lack of water or too much water. For example, the discussion that we have about water in the landscape between Holland, who has too much water, and let's say Saudi Arabia or Egypt or something like this, they have not enough water, right? Or Israel.
And those are the mitigating factors in terms of specifics of design. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah. That's nothing else. Because when we visit, after we got a congress, in different countries, we all start to design in the style of this area. When we went to Belgium, we stopped designing the artificial equipment for the children playground. We designed the labyrinth, which was not a labyrinth at all typical classic style with the clipped box of trees, but it was a group of willow that will protect the dunes, that will protect the sand, that will protect the children, but they can still play around. Because in this area, there was much more related to the native vegetation, that something so artificial imposed on this, like all this merry-go-round or whatever you call this equipment.
So the conferences did have an impact, you say?
Tremendous. And also the experience, the experience, the discussion, for example, on reforestation, on Turkey, the possibility of the reforestation in Turkey, or the possibility to reforestation in Portugal, where you can plant a seedling or where you can plant just the seeds. The approach to us was also completely different. We went invited by the Prince Karim, the Aga Khan nephew, to design the Costa Smeralda in Sardinia. He recognized us, a landscape architect. And then we went to Turkey and they put us in some little school in the little village and near Ankara. And they give us a piece of paper and a pencil and say, please design the landscape for our cities. And our president stood up and said, we can give you only one advice. Employ the landscape architect on the job right from the beginning. That is our advice. So you see, you have all kinds of experience. By the way, I think I was the first landscape architect who designed the reforestation in Northern Ontario. And I got 2 years walking from one authorities from Toronto to Ottawa to Peterborough and get the approval because I was accused that I'm doing beautification, not reforestation. And I tried to explain that beautification and reforestation can go together. And I got full satisfaction because after 25 years, they were sending students to see how the reforestation was done.
25 years so
later.
it took.
Later,
It's a-
25 years later, they send the students.
It's lucky you've lived long enough to know that.
That's right. That gives me also a satisfaction that I did the right thing.
Yeah, yeah. You were mentioning earlier too, we were talking briefly about some of the early members of the Canadian Society of Landscape
Mhm.
Architects in Canada, and Howard Dunnington Grubb being one of the people. Can you tell us a little about his personality, what kind of a person he was?
Oh, he was a great landscape architect, very devoted to the profession. He came to this country in 1911. Then he went to England, married his wife, Laurie Dunnington, and that's why the firm got the name Dunnington Grubb. And he got two firms, Sheridan Nurseries, that he started with my father-in-law, and he brought my father-in-law from England with the whole family, and Dunnington Grubb Landscape Architects. When I came, I joined Dunnington Grubb as a landscape architect. Now, they were working together. Laurie Dunnington was very sensitive to colors, perennials, and they always let them design the perennial borders, a good English style perennial borders. But unfortunately, she was not very healthy lady, and she got sick. She was a member of the Heliconian Club, the first landscape architect who was a member in the Heliconian Club. Then she introduced Ellen Kippax. Then Ellen Kippax introduced me to the Heliconian Club, and I'm up till today with the Heliconian Club.
What exactly is the Heliconian Club?
It's the oldest ladies' club in Toronto, having the ladies who are creative in arts. They need to be professional artists making a living on art. So we have architects, we have painters, sculptors, musicians, and the club bought old church on Hazelton, 35 Hazelton Avenue. And it's our ambition to keep this building in the very good maintenance and good shape.
Now, was Howard and Laurie, were they both trained as landscape architects?
That's right. Yes, they both were trained landscape architect, and Laurie got his training in England, and Howard got the training in the United States.
And what about Helen Kippax? What was her?
She was also a trained landscape architect, and I don't remember right now where she got her training.
And your husband, what was his training?
My husband was an architect, and he graduated from Toronto University in architecture.
And then you were saying that he eventually ran the Sheridan Nurseries. He was the president of Sheridan Nurseries.
He was a manager, and then as his brother was not capable to run, so my husband was the manager and then the president of Sheridan Nurseries.
And who are some of the other people that you would have spent time with as landscape architects in your early days here?
No, most of all was the Hancock family.
Oh.
The Leslie Hancock, Mark's father, worked with my father-in-law in Sheridan Nurseries. I think twice. I think in Bethlehem he went to China. I know there was some intermission, then he came back. Then was Austin Floyd that we worked together, and it was very, very successful and enjoyable work. I have some picture of Leslie Hancock, Austin Floyd, and me tramping with the snowshoes in northern in Quebec, in Papineau, selecting the trees for expo.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then was Frances Blue was a great friend of mine, and fortunately she didn't practice after she got married. But we were keeping in touch all the time, all through this year until she died. She made a mistake in her history of landscape architect by saying that my husband worked for Expo 67, and she apologized to me for this mistake because I was working and not my husband. Yeah.
Has there been other confusions like that in terms of getting you confused with your husband?
Permanently. I tried always to explain that to my client that I am a landscape architect. I do not represent Sheridan Nurseries. I don't force my client to buy the plant material in Sheridan Nurseries. He can buy wherever he likes. Sign the contract with whomever he likes. Mostly I called the tenders because I didn't like to be accused that I protect Sheridan Nursery because of my husband. And it was permanent problem to get the recognition as a professional landscape architect and not the wife of the president of Sheridan Nurseries. Because I think that to be a landscape architect is my effort, is my years that I spent to get my education and my diploma and my practice, and not just a happy marriage to the president of Sheridan Nurseries. That was his achievement, not mine.
Unfortunately, at the time that you were practicing in Canada, or that you still, well, when you started out in the middle 50s, and especially in the 60s, there weren't a lot of other women that were doing what you were doing. Was there other than Helen Kippax and Frances Blue at that time?
No, it was a period that I was alone. When Frances didn't practice, you see. And Ellen died, and I was alone. Then Mrs. Oberlander started to practice, and then there was. But it was a time that I was alone, and it was very hard to get recognition. And I was shocked because in Europe, I got a complete recognition. It was no problem that I am a woman, or my marriage or personal life was not having any influence on my practice. The other thing is that it's completely disregard that women in Europe, they start to work early. They start to work 8 o'clock in the morning, and they are home at 2 o'clock. So when the children come to school, mother is with the children. Now with there is no lunch break. You know, you have your lunch, but you take a coffee and a sandwich. You have 15 minutes, half an hour, but not 1 or 1.5 hour. So the mother is the afternoon with the children. That is a tremendous difference, because mother is still home. The children are going to school for 8 o'clock. Mother is going for work, and then they are both home at the same time.
It sounds like there's more of an understanding of the role of a woman who is a mother and works as well in Europe.
Of course it is, and most it is because of the war that were permanently in Europe. The women were forced to support the family.
Because a lot of men.
Because the man was in the army, or the man was in England, and the women were doing and it was. It's the same. Look, the Roman society, when the Roman soldiers were fighting in God knows where, all over the old world, the women were having a voting rights.
So
that is so normal, you see. Here the woman is forced to stay home and be bored and spend more and more money and get more and more mortgage, so the husband can work more and more to pay the mortgage, and that's what it is.
And with that, as you just said, also there's not the recognition of professional women that there is in Europe.
That's right, it's not.
Now, have you, in the course of your career in Canada, have you seen that change?
Not exactly. For example, I was once the president of the Toronto Engineer chapter, and we were giving the ball, and there was, Pauline McGibbon patronized the ball, and Zina Cherry's a reporter was putting a page in the Toronto Daily Star. Finally, she called me, and she said to me that I delayed the Daily Star. I said, why? How can I delay the the important paper? Oh, because I didn't put there what was my husband doing. I said, first, my husband was not an engineer. He was not at the ball. He was not from Poland. He was from England, and he died 22 years ago. So what on earth has my husband to do with your report? You see?
What did she say?
So my recognition was not through my work, was through my husband, who was dead 22 years ago, who was never a member of this association.
So you're saying
I feel it's shocking.
Yeah.
I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah. When was that? How long ago was it?
Oh, that was about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Something. Not very long ago. No.
So things really haven't. Now, how about
I
in
don't
terms
know
of
how
your
long.
own practice as a landscape architect? Do you think that you're better recognized today than you were when you first came to Canada? Do you think people?
I am retired now. I don't care less about any recognition.
Mm-hmm. So it doesn't. You're not impacted by what's happening there with that.
Oh, I'm recognized all the time. I'm recognized, with the experience I have for so many years. But now I don't care anymore.
Yeah, when you're not doing that.
I'm retired, that's all.
Yes, yeah.
I wish only to publish my manuscript.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's maybe continue with some of the questions. What do you feel?
It's not enough. Not enough. You cover everything.
Well, do you feel, well, we haven't talked about what, I'd like to ask you what you feel your contributions have been to the profession of landscape architecture in Canada. What do you feel you've contributed?
Didn't I cover this? Didn't I tell you enough? Did this over half a century professional work is not a contribution?
Well, I think.
Do you think Expo in Montreal is not a contribution? Do you think that there's about so many lectures? I don't remember even how many more. It's not a contribution. Do you think that to represent Canada in LeGeyt, I was the only voting delegate in this time because it's only one delegate per country? It's not a contribution?
Well, I certainly do think it's a contribution. Now, I didn't know that you had lectured. Where did you do your lecturing? Where was that?
I just told you. Israel, Japan.
No, when you lectured?
Yes, of course.
Okay. I was assuming it was maybe at Guelph or at the University of
I
Toronto.
lectured in Guelph, and I lectured in Ryerson.
Mm-hmm.
I lectured University in Toronto. I lectured all kinds of clubs and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Look, don't ask so many questions because they will be all in my manuscript, and I like to publish the manuscript and not give all the information right now. Let me save something for the future.
Could I ask you that last page then? Can I ask you a little bit about what you think are significant landscape architecture projects in Canada? Not necessarily just yours, but of anybody's work in Canada. What do you think?
I feel that it's not enough. I feel that we are too much looking for our neighbors from south, and we are repeating their mistakes. Our constitution, our selection of plant material is many times based on the achievement in the States, and this is a mistake because we have different climate, we have different growing condition. You can see this even on the selection of plant material for the city of Toronto, which is very much in the south stage style and not proper Canadian. Then also, the professionals are getting too commercialized. We should really more create our own strong organization. And I'm very sorry, all right, I better mention this. Dunnington Grab, you ask me what kind of man was he. He was devoted to the profession. He bought 104 acres in Meadowville, and he decided to create their type of arboretum. Planted different, he designed the plan, he designed the brochure, and they even put me sitting there on the front of the cover of the brochure. And this is supposed to be a headquarter for the Landscape Architects Association. There was room for the meetings, library, archives, everything. And this, if this will be built, this will be really the place that the Landscape Architects Association could get the start and be well recognized and get a permanent quarter for this was for the Canadian Association Landscape Architects, plus Ontario, of course. Now, and we have plans, we have everything. Now, after he died, the board of directors was changed, and my brother-in-law, Howard Stensson, who was not very friendly with Dunnington Grab, sold the whole property and give the money to something else. He gave to the garden center. Now, garden center, I myself discussed this with Dunnington Grab. He was thinking that the Toronto Garden Club has enough money to build the garden center because they are wealthy ladies. And he likes to have something for the landscape architect. And it's a great shame that this whole idea was changed and ruined because it was not what Howard Dunnington Grab was like to have. And I'm surprised that you can, to this extent, change somebody's last will and testament.
Are there would you like to comment on where you think the profession of landscape architecture might go in the future? How do you see the future?
I am not too optimistic. I think that it's great. The Canada need landscape architect. The Canada need our experience and our design, our planning. But the problem is that Canada is too wealthy to recognize the landscape architect. And I will explain this. When I went to Israel for IFLA Congress, I learned that they have in this time, I think, 50 times more landscape architects in the small country that we have here in Canada. And I asked them the same question, why? And they tell me, because we are a poor country. We need to protect our land. You are wealthy country. You can waste your land. And that's what we are doing. We are wasting.
What a dreadful commentary.
But how true?
Yeah.
And that was the situation, you see. I better give you one of my pictures when I was younger. Where is my... And so what I see, first, in the States, somebody will tell you, and I'm now in the States, 6 months, a year, so I know this. I'm going to do some landscape architecture. I'm planting a petunia on my balcony. I say, you are doing some gardening. Let's specify this. What is gardening and what is landscape architect? Because the other way we diminish the recognition of our profession. You cannot call somebody who is going with the truck and planting few shrubs that he is landscape architect. We are working for our diploma to call ourselves landscape architects. Then we need to protect our title. That's one thing. Then we need to better organize ourselves. We need to have a permanent headquarters. We need to have archives. We need to have library. We need to have a place that we can communicate, not just a small place in Toronto, but we need to have a headquarter like Dunningson-Graf like to create together with the Arboretum, like he planned of his 104 acres on Credit River that he was thinking will be our place. I think we cover more or less everything, so thank you very much for your time and for your attention. But I still hope that we will recognize how much we can do for this country and organize ourselves, because this country needs us.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that the country is small enough, though, to make that happen? Because when you're saying that there needs to be a permanent headquarters, and if that was in Ontario, that's pretty difficult for somebody from British Columbia to get to, isn't it? And I think that's a real problem with Canada, is that this is such a big country. To try to unify an organization is very
That's
difficult.
what we need to do. We need to unify all the provinces. We cannot cut a piece of cake and create a separate Quebec and association. And we are all colleagues. We are working for the same purpose. We should be together regarding the boundary. If European countries can get together and work as one IFLA organization with 52 different countries, we can do the same in Canada. By the way, I'm one of the founder of the Quebec Association of Landscape Architects, but it doesn't mean that I like them to be separate. As an association, I'm not talking political problem, but Canada is a big country, but Canada is already overpopulated. And we need to recognize this, and we need to create our own population, not imported, but our own, and create the unity of the country. That is our goal. And if the headquarters will be in Ontario or Quebec or British Columbia, it's not important, because the communication, the transportation is getting better and better. It's question only for a few hours to go from Toronto to Vancouver.
Yes. But it's very expensive.
So why do we don't raise our fee?
Well, that's a very good question. But I think that by having a permanent headquarters, I think what I'm hearing you say is that would lend greater visibility to the profession.
Of course, and that was the idea of Dunningson-Graf. That's what he likes to create.
Yes. Well, there's lots to. I think we've got lots more questions that we would sure like to ask you, because you have so much information to give us, and I thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you.